I also run the SMB chapter for the Zendesk user groups. And for me, it's really about a passion for helping small businesses. 729 will help any size business, large or small. But I came from the world of local media sales. And so I've always had a special place in my heart for local mom and pop shops. And their biggest challenge right now that we see historically has been time. And time is such a valuable resource for anybody, but especially when you're at a small business wearing multiple hats. And we've really seen a lot of capabilities come with AI in terms of giving time back to small business owners and freeing up some of the mundane tasks of running a business to allow them to focus on higher value tasks. So happy to get into it. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brandon. Just to give a quick introduction to myself, I'm Eric Nelson. I've been building on top of the Zendesk platform for about 10 years now. Most recently, I've been with Stylo AI for the past year. Stylo AI is a Zendesk partner. We build AI-focused tools. Some of you guys I know on the call are customers, and we thank you for that. But I lead the AI user group here at Zendesk, but build all sorts of different things on top of the Zendesk platform. So I'll be coming at this for this conversation from a little bit more of the technical side. Going to be leaning very heavily on our panelists today for the business side. All righty. So first, going into this, the AI landscape as we see it here today. And Brandon, I'm going to kick this over to you here in a second. But this came out of a Microsoft survey of March 2024, where they were stating that 33% of small businesses have already invested in AI technology, with another 71%, and this is phrased very oddly, either continuing to planning to continue or start investing in AI in the next year. Is this kind of falling in line with what you are seeing from the small business side with some of your clients?
Yeah, and it's a very interesting statistic because that's 104% of the survey response. If for the viewer mathing at home, but in general, Microsoft is all in on AI, from investing billions of dollars into OpenAI and ChatGPT to launching similar products in Microsoft's Copilot inside of Windows and Office applications. We are seeing Microsoft really be at the frontier of this effort to interweave AI into everything that we do. And a lot of small businesses use Microsoft products, but this wasn't specifically asking about Microsoft products. This survey was looking broader at the overall AI landscape. And what we're seeing here is that a third of SMB respondents are already heavily invested and using AI tools. And so, that's 1 in 3 businesses that are already doing something with AI. Now, it could be something as simple as having a Zendesk chatbot or having an IVR system. AI is so broadly defined, it's really hard to say what AI is. But what's important to note here is that it's on the mind of a lot of small businesses, and the rest of them are either planning to increase their investments in AI or start. And so if you're not thinking about AI at the SMB level, you're going to get lapped here pretty quick, is what this tells me.
Yeah, definitely. I find this very interesting, not only the survey results themselves, the way that they phrased it is odd to me, that why you would do it that way, where it's very easy to see that's 104%, but with the continuing to invest, I understand that. But the thing that's interesting to me is I went back and I did a little bit of searching on some historical surveys that were done more so before the term AI became really hot, and we can thought of it more as like natural language processing, like machine learning and stuff. And SMBs within like the past 2 years were maybe like 3 to 5% of those survey results in comparison to 33% today. So I think that one thing that's really happened over the past year to year and a half is that we've seen that, with ChatGPT and the other competitors in the space, people have started to understand that like they can implement AI into any part of their business very easily, and it isn't something that they are price locked out of by being a small business. So I find that that's a really interesting, and especially as like OpenAI and other models and like locally run models and the open source community gets bigger, we're going to see that price, per token generation, the price to be able to implement AI tools is going to continue to significantly decrease. And like you said, Brandon, we're definitely going to be seeing that SMBs are going to be investing very heavily into it here in the near future. Awesome. So I'm going to kick this over here to Tiffany and Nick here. This is from a different survey, Gartner 2024's. This is their State of the Customer Service report that they do every year, where they said 56% of enterprise companies will spend more money on AI in 2024 than mobile and web development in total. This is really interesting to me because when you look at the actual full scale landscape of what is considered an enterprise company by Gartner, over 50% of those fall within like the tech space. So the fact that they are planning on spending more money on AI than they are on mobile and web development to me is pretty shocking. Nick, do you mind if I kick it over to you to start? Get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw this this survey, and I'm actually kind of surprised it's not higher. And the reason I say that is the opportunity in an enterprise company to get a higher impact, like return on your investment, is proportional to the size of the company, right? So a small business may get a lot less of an ROI on their investment in AI than an enterprise company will. So I'm actually surprised that this number isn't a little bit higher. I actually would have figured between like 60-65% would be throwing more money at that long-term scalability problem than maybe the next couple of features in their mobile app or web development. That's probably in a pretty stable place, mostly because once you implement AI in an enterprise space, it can be put wherever you want, right? That could be an operational type AI where it's like doing all that machine learning and knowledge kind of translation of like big data sets into like spit out a thing that I need to know about this, not just conversational generative AI, but like help me understand trends and business metrics and BI. And the bigger the data set, the more impact that those types of AI functions have. So I think enterprise companies are seeing the opportunity that's there. One of the challenges I see a lot of enterprise companies having, though, is FOMO, really big FOMO. And I think, Brandon, you probably see this in the SMB space as well. Of like, if we don't do it now, we're going to be behind. And what I'm seeing a lot of companies do is skip the discovery phase of seeing how they want to do AI and just being like, buy AI and we'll figure it out later. And that's like a big challenge we're seeing in the enterprise space. But I definitely see this being a common trend because I think this will really, as another tool in the toolkit and being the most powerful tool that an enterprise could have in the toolkit for a number of different places across business verticals. This number actually makes perfect sense to me. And like I said, I'm surprised it's not a little bit higher because I think the opportunity that's there outweighs where they could be investing that time and resourcing elsewhere in the company for the next year or two.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, Tiffany, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree. And Nick, you actually stole my talking point right out of my head. So the AI FOMO is listed in the it might be the same Gartner report, discussing that organizations are really torn between that FOMO and the fear of AI. And I think in larger organizations, we really have to consider our workforce and the adoption. We've got, in our situation specifically, I think it's so important that we spend time on discovery. I'm looking at 4 different third-party applications. I'm learning as much as I can about Zendesk's native functionality and their advanced capabilities. And before we make any decisions, especially in our situation, we really need to make sure that we're choosing the right tool because it isn't one size fits all. And for us, it might work to use multiple tools to achieve the end results that we're hoping for. But I think you make a really good point about people not really considering the impact. It's not just in assisting our customers, but the data analysis that can be achieved with the right AI tool, identifying gaps, creating knowledge-based articles. There's just so many other things we can do. And a really good point was made yesterday. I attended Mindshare with Zendesk where the VP of support for Fetch presented on their adoption over the last year. And he made the point that really that adoption is driven by your change management philosophy and how you approach things. It's got to fall in line with any other large initiative that we would approach in an enterprise level environment, but we don't have the skill set yet. We don't have the proven data to come in and say, okay, we're ready to do this, because we've really got to consider the impact and rely on other organizations' data is really where we're falling.
Yeah, and that actually leads really well into some of the things that we're going to be talking about here today. About people have a tendency, especially with AI, to want to run before trying to crawl or walk. Brandon, what are your thoughts on this? I think I saw you wanted to jump in here.
Yeah, and so I was just coming off mute for the next slide, but I would say that on the small business side, we are seeing almost the opposite effect of people hear these cautionary tales about car dealers that whose chatbot got tricked into giving away a $1 car, and they're fearful of relinquishing power into AI, and so there's a lot of education that we're doing at the enterprise level. You're moving slower, you're moving more methodically, and chances are you're building an in-house solution so you have more control over that versus the SMB space. You are using some of the lower cost tools, and although there's a desire to move fast, there's also a lot of anxiety about moving too fast and not really fully understanding what you're getting yourselves into. So a lot of what we're doing in the SMB space comes down to education.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more.
I think that fear of FOMO also comes from the fact that I've seen several reports identifying that 90% of customer support interactions will involve some form of AI by 2025. So we all feel like, oh my gosh, are we behind the ball already? Are we going to get there in the next year to be able to even include ourselves in that number?
Yeah, and I think that's when people start seeing these very large organizations or these reports from like the Gartner report or other other major surveys that are done throughout industries that are like, oh, customer support is going to be completely overtaken. You're never going to talk to a human again. In the next year to two, it's scary to to business owners, to leaders of organizations to try to make the decision of like, okay, are we ready to implement AI? And for the most part, like you might be, but are you choosing the right way to go about it? And it's like people always think about AI as just being generative AI, just automatically being customer facing conversations. And often that isn't where businesses should start. So Brandon, I'd like to kick it over to you. Like, where do you foresee like there being challenges in this regard with AI for small businesses?
Yeah, especially in the small business space, I think, you've touched on a lot of them, whether it comes to making sure that the chat is saying the right thing, or just understanding where else AI can be applied in your business. We've seen a lot of movement with our clients on interest around helping with marketing messages, and there's a lot of anxiety around well, is this okay because I didn't author it? I'm not the owner of this content. And am I scraping or stealing somebody else's content and repurposing it? And there's a lot of misinformation out there about how generative AI works and how it sources its knowledge. Another person that I follow in the space has started using the term CI, which is community intelligence or communal intelligence, to represent the fact that we're basically chatting with all of the knowledge of human history. So we're not chatting with something artificial. When we engage a tool like ChatGPT or Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, we're sourcing all of the knowledge of humanity, just as if we would go on Google or go to the library. And so having that as a companion is truly a game-changing tool that the businesses that succeed and thrive in 2025 and beyond are going to figure out a way to leverage it in a way that makes sense for them.
Yeah, I like that CI. That's really clever. I think that one thing just to build off of that is, like you said, people have a very it's like it's magic. It's not for the most part. The way the token generation functions is that it is going off of historical context. It is going off of the training data set that it utilized to be able to have the model built, which then it does some computation in the background to be able to choose what is the next word that most likely, based off of the training set that I had, to come next. What I'm finding often with SMBs though is that they really want to get into the fine tuning. They want to get into the very like personalized, chatbot world and stuff, but they feel like they don't have the content. They don't have the the depth of historical tickets and whatever else it might be to be able to create or to have training done against it. Do you feel like that aligns with what you've seen, Brandon?
I think it is a barrier to adoption in the customer service world, but I think, like you said earlier, there's so many other applications, and
Yep.
Nick was alluding to it earlier, that there were so many other applications of where you can plug in AI in your business workflows, and I think the enterprise folks are probably going to talk about that a little bit more here, to say that there's so much more that you can do even if you don't have the data to support it.
Couldn't agree more. Awesome. So we're going to do some digging into about like where is the right starting point to like start implementing AI in your small businesses. So this is just based off some some past history from the folks that we've had here on the call, myself included, of how to best approach this when you're a small business. And I like to say, like, start small and scale gradually. This means that take a very structured approach where, like, Brandon, you gave the great example of a car dealership that provided a chat bot that was customer facing before they had put any of the controls in place of it, and like done any training or anything of that sort. So what I find is best is to start with internal use cases for the most part when starting to tackle AI, especially in the customer support space. Main reasoning for this is like the last thing you want is that car dealership or a chatbot offering to give your customer all of your product for free or whatever it might be, or going entirely against policy. So starting with like internal or co-pilot solutions is very useful for this. It also keeps your human agents who are already trained on your business processes are able to jump in whenever the AI starts going awry. There's a lot of really cool offerings that you can do with this kind of thing. But what I find is like, as long as you have somebody where you have a human in the middle, at least in those starting stages, and when I say starting stages, I mean months, if not a year, would be, in my personal opinion, to be involved in those processes, then you're going to be able to prevent anything from disastrous happening that isn't already, a worry that you might have with your business. Brandon, how do you feel about that bullet point?
Yeah, and just so you know, we're still on the 56% slide on our end in case.
Oh, geez, Louise, are you guys?
Well, I was seeing it moving
I was in the
along.
right one, Brandon.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just me. Okay.
No worries.
I know it's on the slides, but I think that one of the pieces of advice I like to give when we're consulting with SMBs is find an employee that really is excited about what's happening in the space and task them with getting to know it and being that internal champion and resource to educate your own staff. Because there's somebody in your staff that is already playing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so way back in the day at Zendesk, when both Nick and I were working there, we were considered like product experts in the advocacy space for some of the external integrations, and we would have product teams that would come to us and ask us those questions and like help we were able to assist them with designing the implementation of them when they were in those early days, because we were talking to customers every single day and like what was going well and what was not. And I think the same thing can be said here. Like, find a champion internally that really can start to learn the product in and out, learning the nuances of it, and then be able to give it back to your engineering team or whoever is implementing your AI solution, the feedback that's necessary to be able to get the most success out of it. Just to move things right along here, we also have a couple other bullet points here. So spend time on getting your documentation in great shape for AI ingestion. Whether you're deciding to fine tune your model or fine tune your own model, or you're going to use another partner in the space or something, having your documentation as well as just your content in general in a really great place where it can be ingested by an AI, but is also still entirely human readable is really, really important. A lot of this is because of the way that token generation works and the context window of like how those conversations are going with an AI is all based on the historical context that it has. So if you have bad data or if you have legacy articles for products that don't exist anymore, you're going to have some issues. If anyone's interested, we've had a few different AI user groups specifically about this topic where we have some documentation put together for just some quick wins that people can do. I'm happy to share those with you. But lastly,
Oh,
Yeah,
just one thing to add
yeah,
into that is that if you have particularly technical documentation or documentation that is not easy for human eyes, um, there are ChatGPT and and Zendesk, even Zendesk's own advanced AI generative models inside the Help Center are really good at tone shifting that into more user friendly
yep.
conversational data.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's such an important thing, and it's like it doesn't have to be something that you personally have to take on as a task. It is definitely something that you can task AI to be able to at least help you with, and to be able to take a first pass at it. Like you said, if you just even feed in a document or an article into ChatGPT, and you say, provide me a concise summary of this with all of the key points, something to that effect. And if it is missing things, then that means that there's some content in there that is not in a machine readable format, or is provided in a way that isn't useful. Yeah. So lastly here, choosing AI tools with a low barrier to entry. So a lot of this is, a lot of the things in the space, like if we go back to the enterprise slide, um, organizations are wanting to spend a ton of time on building these tools themselves, or choosing a tool that they don't fully understand. Philippe's given some really great, experience there in the chat. People feel free to read into that. But where a lot of it is just like it's all pretty heavy lift. So when you are in that discovery process, like Nick was talking about, as well as Tiffany, make sure that you are asking questions about, like, how long is it usually to get up and running. Make sure you have a nice long time to be able to try to get to understand the tool before you sign like a year, 2 year, 3 year contract. The last thing you want to be want to do is to get locked into something that doesn't make a ton of sense for your business.
And on the SMB side, the one thing I'll add here is that whatever tools you're using professionally also work really great for personal use.
Mm-hmm.
And experimentation and playfulness is the key. Like, I have ChatGPT write bedtime stories for my kids, but personalized to whatever we did that day, including their names. And it does a phenomenal job of coming up with that on the spot, or coming up with a poem. So you getting familiar with the different tools and what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, from Gemini to Perplexity to ChatGPT. Each one of them has their own kind of flavor of the same experience, but they're all unique in their own way. So really being comfortable with just trying and talking to the AI and talking to the chat bots to figure out where the benchmarks are and where the roadmap is really helpful, especially on the small SMB side.
Couldn't agree more. That's really cool. I like the idea of having ChatGPT write bedtime stories for your kids. That's such an interesting use. Awesome. So here's just a couple of quick wins that you can have, that we have for small businesses. As we were talking about, it's all about starting small and then building from there. So in the slide deck, when you guys receive this in the follow-up email, all of these are going to be active links that go to sample projects that are listed on GitHub that are free to use. That goes through and shows you how you can implement some AI tools into your Zendesk instance. Just using, all you need is an OpenAI API key. First one is auto categorization to assist with triaging tickets. This is something where it's very easy to implement. All you need is a ticket field, and then you just hit the endpoint with a webhook, and then it goes through and it categorizes the ticket to whichever of the ticket field values makes the most sense, which then you can build business rules off of. Another one, just automated escalations based off of sentiment analysis. This just goes through, does a quick check, very similar, hits a webhook with the last ticket comment when it comes from an end user or whatever you set up as your trigger conditions. And then if it sees that something super nasty is happening in it, just tags the ticket appropriately, which then you can have to be able to escalate from there. And then an AI-powered workforce scheduling tool that's just attached to a Google Sheet. You have the Google Sheet with all your employees in there and stuff, with the what shifts they're supposed to work and then on what channels, and then There's a companion app that goes into your sidebar where you can have ChatGPT. They can say, "Hey, I need this hour to this hour off," and it will go and update and the worksheet appropriately. So these are
And
all just some quick examples of just like very low effort implementations of AI that shows you that you don't need generative AI to do everything for you. This can just be essentially very much just like machine learning stuff. Brandon, your
And
thoughts?
just adding in here that if GitHub and webhooks and API keys terrify you, Zendesk has done all of the heavy lifting here with some of their add-ons like the Advanced AI Suite and the workforce management tools that you can add onto your instance and have it be a little bit more turnkey.
Absolutely. Perfect example of like choosing your tools for what makes sense for your business. Awesome. I'm gonna kick it over to the enterprise folks here now. So same question as what I was asking from Brandon here. Of like, what are you seeing for the challenges in the near future for enterprise orgs trying to implement AI?
You want to go first, Toph? You want me to?
No, go right ahead, Nick.
So many. The short answer is there's so many challenges when you get to enterprise, and I think Felipe actually pointed out one of the ones I've been seeing repeated often, which is there's not a strategy. And I think especially when you get to the enterprise space, you need to be more intentional when rolling out these transformative technologies. It doesn't really matter if it's AI or something else, but it is a transformative technology. And if you do not have a strategy around how you want to use it, you will never be successful. So one of the biggest challenges that I've seen with a lot of enterprise like space companies is we're going to buy it and figure it out later. And then in the case that Felipe mentioned, they bought a tool when there was a better one out there, or there was one that more fit that process, but someone made a decision, and that was a choice. Now, on the flip side, there's a balance because I do see a lot of hesitation to make the decision as well, right? So you've got kind of these two sides, extremes of the spectrum of like, just go do it and figure it out, or really dragging your feet around a transfer of technology and not even giving it a lot of thought or not making a decision around what to do. That's like before we even start looking at vendors and start doing that, like a strategy and how you want to, or what you want to impact from a business like goal, objective, initiative level. How can AI influence that? So when I was looking at AI for Pinterest, I was looking at our top, like our business Pinterest company-wide stuff, and then our IT objectives, like our OKRs and KPIs for like the whole company, right? And it's like, how can AI, for example, help drive sales productivity? Or how can it help drive engineering productivity? And looking at it through the lens of, cool, we're going to define a strategy around AI with engineering productivity. So we started with a real specific task that we wanted to explore the option of AI with. And the output has been extremely effective in helping engineers be more effective. We use a combination of generative AI and machine learning that we built in-house. But we started with a strategy. And I think if you don't start with that first block, you're just kind of going down a path without a light, and it's nighttime, right? You're going to stumble and fall, and you're going to, there could be a cliff there. And that's like something I've seen time and time again, not just with AI, but transformative technologies in general. Like that's a very, it's not a new problem, and I wish it was. I really wish it was a new problem, but it's being intentional with your strategy around transformative technology is something everyone should be more mindful about in the enterprise space, because your impact goes up with your strategy and your time investment. If you want good ROI, take the time, build a strategy, and then take the time and don't rush through implementation.
Yeah, Katie just dropped a great experience that aligns just so well with what you were just saying there, Nick, about, you've got these VPs, you've got these C staff level that are coming in and they're just essentially knee jerk saying, we need AI, or they're going out and they're buying tools that don't make sense for the entirety of the business. Tiffany, what are your thoughts around this? Like, how are you guys, trying to approach this?
Well, leave it to my other user group co-leader. Katie and I are co-leaders of the Texas user group to
Cool.
call out one of the points that I was just going to make, which is great. Thank you, Katie. I think that's one of the challenges that we've had, is that as a really large organizations, we have 900 employees, and we have, like I said, 15 different independent product lines, and we're mergers and acquisitions. So they've either been acquired or merged into existing product lines over the last 20 years. They've all got different operating practices. They've all got different cultures. They've all got different things going on. And I'm finding, as I really dig in, they're all investing time in researching what we can do with AI in their space. And so they're operating in silos, unfortunately. And I just had a great conversation yesterday with, I think, one of our product leaders who's on the call today about some things that he's been working on. And so we were discussing the idea of a community of practice where we can just kind of bring together everybody who's sort of delving into AI and really start to uncover what is hindering people currently. What is it that we can solve for? What are we trying to do, rather than just throw AI at it because we have FOMO? So we really want to understand how our employees and our agents can feel supported. And I think that was a great point that you made during the small business portion, is that finding somebody who's eager to adopt the tool and making sure that what you're launching initially is something that helps them with their job. It solves that. What is it that they're being hindered by? Possibly even including them in choosing the right tool and making sure that that is a group effort, because they're much more likely to adopt something that they've been involved in and that they feel excited about. And I think that's great. Zendesk has identified that as their strategy, is the agent assist is the number one thing. Rather than spending a whole lot of time on these bots that we have to go in and build with Flow Builder, let's really focus on how we can assist our agents first.
Yeah.
And then they're going to be the supervisor of the agent, of the AI agent. And I think that not only allows for the time you need for change management, but it really does make it an enterprise level initiative. You're socializing the concept across the different areas, and we're looking to where we can come in and share what we're learning. How do we feed prompts? Who do we use? Which tools are you trialing? For example, we're using, I think I counted 8 different AI note-taking apps across our organization. And
Oh my
so
goodness.
yeah, it's crazy. You get on a call and there are more AI note-takers than humans. And so one of the things I did was I actually invited 2 or 3 note-takers to the same call so that I could evaluate what their summaries and action items were. And that got people, talking and sharing that information. So I think that's really important. Socialize what you are doing. Consider a community of practice across your organization to really help drive the development of that strategy, because Nick's absolutely right. That is the number one priority before you sign any sort of contract.
I also think that if you do that, you're going to have some situations where you're going to find that like AI isn't the right tool set that's necessary for like what the certain parts of the business are trying to, to solve for. Often, everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel when it's like, if people are coming to you with these conversations or like with these tools that they're thinking about and the problem that they have, it allows for you to say like, well, hold on, like you don't need AI for that. We actually already have a product that we've already have, vendors signed on for over here that solves that exact issue. So I think transparency and making data-driven decisions, like you were talking about with inviting those note takers all to the same call so that you could have like a direct comparison and try to make some decisions around which one you feel is best for your business is just like very, very smart. And I think all of us could adopt.
Awesome. I'll also make the point, Eric, you said earlier that it's not magic. It still feels like magic to me until
Sure.
you explain it. And to be honest, you do such a good job of explaining it that I do now understand more about that logic. And I think that the more time you spend talking to smart people who have spent years on this, the layers kind of begin to peel back, and you're really understanding what you are looking at and what capabilities are available to you. Doesn't seem so
That,
magic, but still kind of feels
yeah.
like it sometimes.
Oh, I mean, if you go and you look up videos of how David Blaine does magic online, so you understand what he does, but it doesn't make it not any less impressive. Like this is just the fact that we are where we are with AI today. It truly does feel like magic. I mean, I've been delving into this space pretty heavily in the recent years, and I continue to be impressed and surprised at just like the speed of iteration that's happening here. Awesome. So we'll just do some quick digging into, and I know we're probably running a little short on time here, so if anyone has to drop here in the next 5 minutes, feel free, about implementing AI in enterprise spaces. This is all kind of going into what we were just talking about with Nick, Tiffany, as well as Brandon. Everything that we're talking about from the SMB side of the enterprise does have a lot of overlap, but it's all about making database decisions. Being able to figure out where and what tools you're going to use. And Tiffany, I think this is almost exactly what you were just talking about, with like doing an internal project first to be able to figure out what is the landscape at your business currently and like what are the problems you're trying to solve for, and kind of going from there. Does that sound about like what you guys are trying to do?
Yep, exactly.
Very cool. And then, creating like a centralized context repositories. Now, what I mean by this is like figuring out not only what are the tools that you're looking for, but like having a full spreadsheet of the problems you're trying to solve for, the tool sets that you already have, but also what are the toolings and integrations that you need to have to be able to provide context for the problems that you're solving. By being able to have like a place in a central warehouse of this information, it allows for your teams, that are going through and doing the procurement process to be able to make sure and check the boxes along the way. And, we've had some great conversation that's been happening in the chat here, specifically around governance, which is something that is such a evolving process in the AI space right now. Essentially, if you want to be HIPAA compliant, FedRAMP compliant, anything of that sort, you have to have very, very, very strict guidelines. So having a place where you have like a context repository of like what are all of the key points that your business needs to keep in mind as you're looking at different AI tools is going to help you out immensely. And then also when you do start building out those tools or start implementing them and stuff, do processes just like what Tiffany was talking about. And I swear we didn't talk about this at all before this, about inviting those bots into a call and finding out, let's do some cross comparison. Let's find out which one is good, which one is not. And then also when you've chosen your correct vendor, make sure that you're able to get real-time feedback on what is going on with those, so that if things start to go south, whether it be because of a new context that was given to the bot or whatever else it is, that you have that information that your agents and your administrators of your systems can go in, take a look, and then try to make improvements from there. I'm going to open up the floor here to the entirety of the panelists about your thoughts around all of these different, bullet points that we had on the SMB slide as well as this one. Do you guys have anything else that you feel or anything you'd like to build on from this?
I put a bunch of stuff in the chat, Eric, around like questions I generally like initially think about around any sort of AI conversation. But I think specifically around like, regardless of your SMB or your enterprise, don't try to boil the ocean, right? Don't try to solve everything at the same time. Be incremental, be intentional about where and how you want to implement stuff. And in general, my perspective is when it comes to vendor choices, I'm willing to take 80% of a solution for 100% of a vendor relationship and the support to implement in the long term.
Couldn't agree more.
Because this is the epitome of it takes a village. Like AI is quite literally the village we're all building at this point. It's that the CI reference Brandon made earlier about being community intelligence. If you have a good partnership with a vendor, you will be more successful in the long term. I've had plenty of conversation with vendors that are not great around this particular topic, and it's a struggle, right? Like you buy a product and you're stuck, but if you have a good relationship, take 80% of a solution and work on the other 20% and the gaps there. It's probably the biggest piece of advice I think I could give for SMB and for enterprise companies outside of having a strategy and being cautiously curious about the technology. It's not going away. We're not like AI is now out of the box. We now live in a world where it's not going to be less important. It will just grow in importance. So being curious about what to do with it, how you want to interact with it, and to Brandon's point, playing around with it, or Tiffany with the multiple bots, like seeing what it can do, to build not only your own comfort level with it, but also offer a comfort level to people who may have a challenge with the change management of this kind of new world, this paradigm shift we're experiencing with AI.
Yeah, we all have to be sharing our insights and like the wins that we have around this, because Tiffany's great idea around like, okay, let's start sourcing all of this together so that we can have like an understanding of the landscape at our business. Something I hadn't thought of, and it's like if we're not sharing these ideas and these concepts, it's like if you're building in a silo, you're not going to build the right tool. So
one thing I'd like to add in here, just as closing thoughts, is that throughout the history of computers and technology advancements, it's always had to have been the smart people, the most educated people that led those conversations, because they were the ones with all of the knowledge. Knowledge has been democratized. So one thing that we look at using AI in the SMB side is bring the AI into the conversation, not only to take notes and summarize, but also to collaborate and create and brainstorm and get feedback. If you're not sure about your AI strategy, ask ChatGPT, hey, here's my business use case. What do you think? Am I using AI correctly? It'll tell you. It'll be very polite about it too, unless you prompt it to be sarcastic, and then it'll be sarcastic. But leveraging AI for things like generating frequently asked questions, or just exploring other areas of your business from a fresh perspective, I think is always helpful.
Couldn't agree more. And if you have the ability to essentially have a bunch of other employees for no cost at all, like why not try to utilize them and just have another brain to be able to tap into?
Such a good point. That's actually what I'm doing. I'm using ChatGPT to develop the slide deck for the presentation on our strategy. So it's been incredibly helpful, and it ends up taking me down rabbit holes, but I am super grateful for the collaboration. That's what I feel I had not opened myself to. I think the point around curiosity is so important. Like, just get curious, start looking at what others are doing with prompts, looking at what others are doing with other forms of AI, and your mind will just be blown. It'll be open to all the possibilities, and then the challenge is developing that clear path forward.
Couldn't agree more. So I know we're over time here, so I'm just going to do a quick cruise through. Here is a couple of more free projects that we're going to be giving, that's going to be in the follow-up resources. I'm not going to delve into them here, but all of them have documentation. I'm happy to have conversations around them. Every AI user group, we try to provide 1 or 2 tools that we've put together that we find useful for people to be able to get more value out of Zendesk. I'd love to take some time to get some questions from the group, get any closing remarks, closing thoughts from the panelists. Brandon, you have something?
I was just going to say, I do need to drop for the next meeting, but Eric,
Great.
Thank you for putting this together for us. And
Absolutely.
With the enterprise user group, the SMB user group, we'd love to see you guys over there as well. So thanks again, and see you on the message boards.
Yes.
We should do this again, Eric. I need to drop as well for my next meeting, but if you guys if you get the questions, Eric, Tiffany, and Brandon and I can get a follow-up email out with like answers to the question that come up, because some of us have to drop. So great seeing you all. Hope to see you at all the user groups. And Eric, thanks for coordinating this.
Of course.
Do it again, because this was actually super great. So loved it.
Great.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you guys so much. Awesome. Well, I've got a little bit of capacity here for the next 10 minutes. If anybody has any questions, anything they'd like to get into. If not, that's totally fine. I'm happy to wrap this up however people want to handle it.
I want to give people a chance to come off mute and ask questions, but I know I definitely have questions about some of the things we're trying to do
Sure.
with the API to download or to access a specific set of tickets. This is something I'm working on with the product leader I mentioned who's here, is how do we get access? Because he's basically training a ChatGPT model, and how do we get him access to all of those tickets under that brand only through the API? So it's a bit of a technical question, but if you have time for it, I'd love to kind of jump into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different ways that you can handle it, but the way that I would definitely suggest is using the incremental export API, particularly when you find it under the search documentation in the developer documentation. You can limit it down to a particular brand from there, and then give it some more condition sets, such as like ticket status or any other kind of parameters that you want to give it, and then export it from there. If you're then wanting to utilize that as a training data set, there's something you're going to want to do that's called PII masking. So a lot of this is, unless you are building this in-house or have agreements signed with like OpenAI or whoever else the partners are, you're going to want to try to prevent any PII from getting exposed from being utilized for training processes. There's a lot of tools that are out there in the marketplace to be able to do that. One of the main libraries that you can utilize is called Talon. There's some pieces on top of that that you can utilize to be able to essentially use natural language processing to identify like words that could be PII, as well as like credit card numbers, phone numbers, things of that sort. And then it just masks them with just like a placeholder value. So like first name, last name, phone number, things of that sort. And then that allows you for you to be able to open it up to training.
Amazing. Thank you for pointing that out. That's awesome.
No worries. Yeah, happy to talk about it offline as well.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Well, it looks like everybody's pretty much dropping off here for the most part. So I feel like we're probably good to close this up. But just want to say thanks to the remainder of you that stuck around for us for the last little bit. I hope you had a great or got a lot out of this discussion. I know I did. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us, any of the user group leaders. Feel free to find us all in the community at community.zendesk.com. We all try to at least keep an eye out over there as well. And just thank you. Hope to see you all in the next sessions. Please join the enterprise user group. Please join the small business user group. They have a lot of great conversations over there as well. Awesome.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.